wow, Alistair
It's
decided to join this time.
Alistair. Look at him.
Or
He was
Alistair.
like, Ali
Oh,
what?
it's Alistair. I've been calling him Alistar this whole time, but it's Alistair. I'm so sorry because you got the stair part, not just star. I mean, you're
Yeah,
a star, but
But he does stare quite a bit. And-
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, he's through that little monocle is like just looking at you through that soulless eyes.
It's funny because the microphone that he's holding looks like he's got just like a cup of tea and he's just taking a really long sip because of how small, like, it just makes you think he's just like sipping tea with his monocle, like going,
Yeah.
You go on.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you pay for that tea, Alistair? Huh? Or is Craig gonna have to pay for that again?
Oh, I see Craig in the back. Do you see him? I see him over there. He's like watching. He's counting how many cups of tea Alistair's had.
So you okay? That's fine. I guess whatever. We're not gonna get in the middle of family. Just make sure you're paying your tab, dude, to the barkeep, please.
Or just take Craig back at some point.
And
Nice.
write him down in IOU at the very least, man. It's not cool. I don't mind paying for my bro here and there, or like if things are tough, but formalize it, man. Formalize it. Don't be that person.
Craig, you good? Are you sure you're okay with this? Anyway, okay. Folks, welcome back to the TBD Tavern. I'm your host, the Wandering Ambu, or co-host, and my other co-host is Silver Blaze.
Hey guys, it's Silver Blaze X. How are you all doing tonight?
Man, all right, taking a note, make sure to say the X. The X is a key part of that. Got it.
Oh, okay. So just to clarify, the reason I always say X is because actually I don't want to say, but just don't Google Silver. Well, don't tweet. Don't look through Twitter. Just Silver Blaze. Please, just spare your eyes.
I'm ready.
Oh gosh, no, don't do that to your psyche, guys. So if you ever do look for me on socials, just Silver Blaze X all together, no spaces, because you might end up finding some very unsavory NSF artwork and communities that I don't in any way shame, right? But also do not represent. So I definitely don't want to be associated. Not because, again, I'm not shaming. It's not me, man. All right? It's just not me. Anyways, hey guys, welcome to the TBD Tavern. So today we're going to continue on part 2 on the Boy and the Heron. This time I'm actually saying it right because I think I said herring throughout the first recording. Now that I just realized, like an idiot.
I didn't even think about it, but honestly, like I think so. When Silver and I were talking a little bit before we decided to sit down with our mead, I was telling him about how my partner and I told my partner I was so excited to see the Boy and the Heron, and my partner did. Imagine like an anime, like when the characters have that look where they're like snickering and they're like trying to hold their laughter back, but they have that sinister look, and you're like, "What?" And she was just like, "The Heron," and I was like, "What?" She's like, "You mean the heron, right?" And ever since then, I have always had to like watch. I'm like, "Yes, we're gonna go see the Boy and the Heron," and then she'll just go like, "Heron."
Heron. Yeah, see, that's the thing about your significant others, right? We love them because they'll never let us live it down whenever we make mistakes. It's like they're always just waiting, like just patiently waiting for us to make a mistake.
Man. But yeah, we were talking about The Boy and the Heron, which is loosely based off of How Do You Live. One thing I wanted to add, Silver, if you don't mind, something that I found interesting, because I was doing a little bit more research on The Boy and the Heron, because let's be clear here. I feel like The Boy and the Heron is one of those movies where the themes are at the core of the movie and not so much the story. I think you and I talked about that, right? We agreed on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what I found interesting was there was another angle that was brought up in another review for the movie. And what they were saying was this is a movie that isn't based off of How Do You Live, but is an ode to memory and an ode to nostalgia. And so what a lot of people, what this reviewer was indicating, which I think I can agree with, is that this story, the reason why it's not based off of How You Live is based off of how Miyazaki felt when he got How Do You Live and then read How Do You Live. So it's like an ode to his childhood more than it is an ode to the book. So, but that's why How Do You Live is snuck in there in the movie where we left off in the last episode, is because it's a reminder to Miyazaki about his childhood, as much as it is a love letter to animation and storytelling.
Right. No, for sure. And that brings a lot of complications especially when we're talking about childhoods. I'm sorry though, really quickly. I'm sorry to keep derailing us, but Ambu and I were reviewing some of the reviews from you guys on the internet, on Google, and I just want to say I am disappointed in you little gremlins on Google, like writing these horrible 1-star reviews. Okay, maybe horrible is a little too harsh. I'm sorry. Take it back. You guys need to, like, I think you and Ambu said it right, and he pointed it correctly. I think you guys are going too deep on this movie. It's a very simple story, man. It's kind of one of those movies that you just kind of like admire the art, and you admire the story that's being told, and that's it. You don't question the different layers that some other Miyazaki movies have. This one was pretty straightforward because I just remembered I also had a coworker who I usually go watch a lot of anime movies. Actually, I went to go see Godzilla -1 with him, but he went to go watch this one on his own, and he was like, I didn't understand it. I was so confused. I didn't get what he was trying to do, or et cetera, et cetera. It sounds exactly like this reviews. In my opinion, he grabbed a piece of history, historical markers, right, with some culture from Japan, right. He put in a story of what a boy would go through of losing his mother through a very traumatic experience, to then having to go through growing as a boy in Japan during the World War II and Pacific War days, and just moving into this entire new era of Japan. It's gonna be weird. It's gonna be cringy. It's gonna be different. But I think that's about it, man. There's not many more levels to it. People, from what I saw in the reviews, get stuck on the whole, and I'm guilty too, because on the last episode I said it, and it was weird. The whole, the sister being impregnated by the dad, and then her just saying these things like, "Well, I'm your mom now." And I get it, to a Westerner to Westerners like us, maybe it sounds weird or different. But Japan's a whole different other culture, man. Things are different on the other side of the world. And had I not become like an investigator, like I am, what I'm doing, and money was never an issue. I don't know if I ever shared this with you, Ambu. I actually wanted to be an anthropologist. Primarily a cultural anthropologist. If I could, if money was no object for me, I would love to travel to different countries. I would love to learn different languages. I would love to be able to experience different points of view, right? Because I think there's something just so beautiful about cultures allowing humans in different parts of the world to paint canvases with all these different colors in life. And that sounds super cheesy, but and at the same time, sometimes even painting the same canvas just differently. Like, for example, and this is going to sound kind of stupid, but I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to say it, is how humanity came to the conclusion of pyramids in Egypt, and then pyramids in Mexico, and then pyramids in South America. Like, they weren't even close to each other. They weren't like conquistadores that were like traveling from continent to continent. There weren't like Vikings that were going from place to place. Like these things were established already before Vikings, before los conquistadores, and they all kind of, you know, came to the same sort of structures. And that's, I guess it's something that I would love to be able to have the opportunity to do, is to be able to see all these different perspectives and points of view from these different cultures on how they handle the same type of situation. How would a kid in Japan handle losing his mom and finding himself in this whole new type of household dynamic versus a kid in Mexico? Same scenario, right? How is that Mexican kid going to handle it differently from the Japanese kid? Or how is that kid in Brazil going to handle it from those other two? Like, they're all going to handle this differently. They're all going to paint their stories too differently. Like, they're all not going to react the same way. So I guess I just want to remind everybody in Tavern that, you know, keep an eye out, keep an open mind as to what the movie was trying to tell us, and that maybe it wasn't so deep, but it's a good also like thought. What am I trying to call it? Like a fun thought exercise in a way to see how things would have resulted in different countries. I don't know. I feel like it was judged a little bit too harsh on that side. Yes, it's cringy, but I don't know, man. Sorry, I ranted on Boo.
I mean,
shove my
the only
face
thing
on
I
my
want to
head.
add to that. No, you're good. I didn't want to interrupt because you were in a flow. Look, everybody in the tavern, and also those who maybe are one of those Google reviewers who somehow stumbled upon this and go, "How dare they call me out?" The thing for me that I go into most Miyazaki movies is that the story isn't as important as the themes and the discussions that are being presented. I think I brought this up to Silver. I don't know if I did it in a tavern episode or in just in one of our many off tavern chats. But Mononoke no Hime, or Princess Mononoke, is my favorite Miyazaki film of all time.
Right.
And the reason for that is I really love its exploration of the contradictory nature of human civilization. Because in this movie, what Miyazaki is trying to explore is the duality of progress and the duality of good and bad. Because in Mononoke, what's happening is that there's no real bad villain per se in Mononoke. Well, I guess you could argue that the monks were, because they just wanted to get the deer god's head.
Yeah.
But like, the lady, hold on, let me pull up the name. I don't want to just.
No, you're fine, and I know what you're saying. It's kind of like similar to. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just trying to pull up the character real quick before I Lady Eboshi, that's her name. The thing in the movie in Mononoke is like Ashitaka wants to preserve the symbiotic relationship between nature and humanity. He represents kind of the way in which we were once connected to nature and the way that we respected it. And you know, you look at a lot of older legends and a lot of older tales and stories, there's always a reverence for nature and the way in it providing to us, as well as giving back, a give and take, if you will. Whereas Lady Eboshi represents what is human progress and human invention and modern civilization. Where for her, she's not bad in a sense of she's actually trying to give all these women jobs who are in brothels. She saves them and pays for them, and then lets them work in her iron melting iron shop. And then she has a colony of lepers that help her to build the weapons that she uses to protect her work. Everybody is benefiting from her, and they have a life that is built that is better for them, but it comes at a cost. And so Mononoke is an examination of where is the line drawn for humanity to where we continue to do what we believe is necessary and also respect nature, but at the same time, how do we define what's good and what's evil? Because for both sides have a justification for why they do what they do, but then both sides also have a justified perspective of why the other side is wrong. Or not justified, but it's an understandable perspective. So you can empathize with both. And it kind of ties into Miyazaki's core because Miyazaki is a man who's been known to be an environmentalist, but he also admits his own hypocrisy. So that's the thing about The Boy and the Heron, to tie it back, is this movie isn't a plot that is meant to be big and deep and grandiose or anything like that. What really comes at the play for The Boy and the Heron is the themes that are being explored, like the stages of grief, a boy learning to let go of his mother and working through his trauma and trying to move forward. The idea of, for Miyazaki personally, buying into the lie, because, well, we'll get into the plot point later about why I bring this up. But, like, you know, in terms of admitting to yourself that even though you hear it and you know it's a lie, you still move towards it. So like Miyazaki, for example, is notorious for saying that he's going to retire. I think he said he's going to retire like 7 times, probably less than that, but like it's felt like so many times. But he can't deny the storyteller that he is, and he always keeps coming back. So there's a lot of stuff like that that plays into these stories. So they're not meant to be profound the themes are meant to be thought-provoking and are meant to sit with you, and you're meant to take some time to really think about it. But the plot itself is not a deep plot. It's just a plot that allows rumination on the thematic elements that are presented to the viewer.
Hey! It definitely rattled the Google reviewers. It provoked them all, right? Provocation, success. So I guess he did his job. But yeah, well said. I just wanted to go ahead and talk about that really quick, because I know this is already like a really lengthy movie. I didn't mean to derail us too much. I'm sorry, but it's just like we were seeing the reviews right now, and it's like, dude, like it's not that crazy. It's not that bad, and like just accept the movie, man. That's about it.
But I think, to hear me out, and I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Always.
Okay?
Oh, I love it when you do that.
I think what a lot of people always expect with Miyazaki is like whimsical, fantastical, like very poignant stories that are more accessible, right? And I'm not trying to say that like his movies aren't accessible, like The Boy and the Heron isn't. But I think what's different is like I think people always come in with the assumption of like Ponyo or Spirited Away or Howl's Moving Castle or Totoro, something that's more easier to digest, easier to understand, isn't as deep, I guess. I mean, like the themes are there, but the story takes more precedence, right, than what's trying to be explored. Whereas if you look at a lot of other movies that are more personal to Miyazaki, the movies that he loves are like Porco Rosso and The Wind Rises and The Boy and the Heron, which are more thought-provoking and less like story. But I think for a lot of Western audiences, and yes, I'm going to say Western audiences, everybody comes into I think most people come into a Miyazaki movie expecting Spirited Away or Totoro or like Ponyo. So more whimsical and more like happy, upbeat, and all that cutesy, I guess.
Yeah, because those were the most recent ones. But I mean, some of his older films are pretty dark, and they handle very like dark historical moments in history and very sad life, death. And everybody plays a role in life, that not necessarily there is a bad guy and then there's a good guy, right? Like in this movie, the same thing, right? Do we really have a bad guy? There really isn't. I mean, in my opinion, or I don't know what you think, right? But I didn't really see even the Heron being an antagonist. The Heron was just another mechanism, another part of life that plays along to kind of move the narrative, to kind of move this kid through this entire, experience.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. I don't think The Boy and the Heron honestly has an antagonist, and the so-called quote-unquote antagonist at the very end, you can understand their reasoning and why they do what they do. Like, I don't think you could argue that anyone is really an antagonist. which we can get into it, once we dive further into the story. So let's get everybody here at the table here, or gathered around the table. Sorry, everybody, y'all, we're not all at this
Not
table.
too
This
close.
table is not big enough.
Some of these
Yeah.
dudes smell. Please, not please, not that close.
But what was it? We left off last time talking about when Ashitaka finds the book, How Do You Live, after the books drop while he's making his arrow more aerodynamic. And the thing that we key in on is it says to the adult, I think to the grown-up Maito from Mom. And he reads it, and it's sad, it's relatable, it reminds him of his mom, and it's a reminder to us that at the heart of Maito is a boy who hasn't gotten over his mother and her death. And as he's reading it, there's tears, we see that. But then we hear the maids, or I like to call them the grannies because they're just adorable little grannies, yelling out for Natsuko. And he's like, what happened? Why are we yelling for her? And as he goes outside, he meets them, and then they're like, she's gone. We've been looking for her. She's not in the in your house nor in the main house or whatever. And that's when Maito says that, tells Kiriko, the one that wants the cigarettes, that he saw her going into the forest and they need to go look for her. Right? I believe that's what happens next. And then they start going into the forest.
Yeah, you're right. Because we were talking about how Miyazaki was like, how they directed, right, the movie really quickly while he was going through that very intimate book written to him by his mother. From his mother to him, how we see the aunt, now mother, what's her name? I
think it is Natsuko, right? Have I been saying her name right?
Yes. And she just really quickly, we see like a quick flash that she's going into the woods, and we're like, okay, cool, whatever. We don't think a big deal about it because it's literally it's her home. Like, she knows that place better than anybody. So you don't think that there's going to be anything bad about her going to the woods. Maybe she's just getting a walk, pregnant women often get asked to exercise and move around, right? Because it's good for her and good for the baby. But, it turns out after he kind of gets snapped out of it, like Ambu just said, right? Something is up. Like, she should have not been on that side of the woods, right? Because they can't even find her. And he remembers this. And he takes one of the grannies. What is her name?
Kiriko.
Kiriko.
It's like Kiriko. Kiriko.
Kiriko. Okay, so he takes Kiriko. Well, not that he really takes her, right? Kiriko just kind of follows him, right?
Yeah, she's like, turns on, we should stop. It's getting dark. I can't see. I have night blindness. She's like, come on, bro.
Yeah, she's not into it, man. But she's still following because she knows that he's her responsibility at the end of the day. He's still a kid and she's a grown woman. But he's like, no. She came through here. Something's up. Let's follow. And then they start finding little clues, footprints, etc. that she went through there. Kiriko's still not having it. And eventually, they reach that tower again, right? Mm-hmm. They reach the tower. They are able to find this like wide, gaping, just like hall, right?
Uh-huh.
Really?
I'm sorry, the way that you put those pauses between. You're just like that wide, gaping, and I'm like, okay, so are we about to say hole? And then you're like, hole, and I was like, oh.
You know what? So, Ambu, you recently became one of my new mods. I think you are in brand to literally dissect everything that I say to make fun of me. So you're fine. Welcome to the team, man. Now you've officially been. You officially now have reached the ranks of my mods because their job is literally to like pick at everything that I say to try and make it weird and clip me and whatever. I'm gonna go into that.
Chat. All right, folks, in the comments below, tell me, would you agree? The way that it was set up, it was like.
But I didn't mean it. Okay, it wasn't even for the clips. I'm not even streaming. It's just how I pictured it. But not in the way that Ambu was just picturing it, and you all a bunch of little dirty little minds that I already know are in I see every single one of you right now on the table right now, just listening into this. You already give me. Don't give me that slide, Alistair. Just you know what? Just whatever. Keep going.
What
Sorry,
else? I got you too.
I'm not gonna.
Good.
I'm not gonna describe this anymore. Go on. But you tell us about this
Okay. So what
thing.
happens is they see this wide gaping hall.
Shut.
and then they see lights go off, and then of course you hear the heron doing the whole like, "Your presence is requested. Your mother wants to see you." And obviously to everyone, this is a trap, right? Because we know, well, at least as far as we understand, Mahito's mother has been dead.
Yep.
She's been dead for a while. She was burned in the hospital. And Kiriko's like, obviously this is a trap, young master, like we shouldn't do this. But Mahito's like, no, I need it. Even if this is, I still need to go do this.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the big thing, is like everything is centralized around this lie. What comes next is all centered around this lie, because we all know it's a trap. She's not there. But like how Miyazaki always says, I'm gonna retire, and everybody's like, sure you are. It's the same thing. It's buying into that, but wanting to still move forward and see what happens anyway. And then what is also pointed out is that he's the only one that can hear the voices, but Kiriko can't, because he's in the same bloodline as his great granduncle, and so that's the reason why the hallway is there and it's open, is because he is a descendant. And so they go in, and naturally, like all good traps are, the opening closes, and then the heron pops out magically from like this wall as it closes and says, "I will lead you there, follow me," essentially. Yeah. And then from the hallway they go into the big center of the tower, where I don't know what to call it exactly, but the central area of the tower. And that's when the heron is like, "Here's your mother. She's been waiting for you," or whatever it may be. And again, Kiriko's like, "Mahito, this is a trap." And he's just like, "I'm still gonna do it anyway." So he actually walks up to her, because it looks like his mother asleep. She's facing the love seat. She is laying there looking like she's in a peaceful slumber.
Yep.
And then he tries to say, "Wake up, mother, wake up." And he shakes her, and then she starts turning into the pool of water. And that's when the heron is just like, "Bro, like if you wouldn't have touched her, it would have stayed longer. This is one of my best works."
Yeah. Which reinforces the whole fact that it's a trap, guys. I mean, he's basically telling him, man, did you really have to do that? I worked on that so hard to trick you. Oh, well, you know?
And so, so go on.
By the way, really quickly, I was just going to say, just really quickly, when he's using the bow, he has really strong Ashitaka energy. Did you notice?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I can see that.
Like he's like essentially. I'm not saying this is what happened, right? I'm just saying that Mahito literally almost feels like a copy paste of Ashitaka in a good way, not in a lazy way. I'm not calling out Miyazaki saying that he doesn't have an original character. All I'm saying is that he has that also kind of like strong, I don't know, because again, what I said in the last episode, as a kid, I would have not been able to do all the shit that he did. I would have not been able to walk into that place. I'm not going to describe it again. I wouldn't have been able to walk into that place. And the moment that wall closed up behind them, I would have been shitting my pants. So I don't know how he's been able to do it so far. So that's where I was like, you know what? This kid has like such strong Ashitaka energy from Princess Mononoke, right? That one of your favorite films. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just like, oh, that's right.
No, I thought I was talking too much, so I was trying to.
You would never talk too much, never.
But like, I think
Robert Pattinson.
I think in that moment, what's key? I thought I had a thought, and then it just kind of.
And then I killed it like an asshole that I.
No. It's like part of it is like the curiosity, right? Like I think for Maito, it's like it's kind of like so I'm gonna just use this example because I binged the crap out of Jujutsu Kaisen season 2, and the fight between
He did.
Nobara and Maito, the villain, when he says like it doesn't work or whatever, it's like it should be obvious, and then she says even if it is, like you still have to try. It's kind of like that philosophy of like you should still do it anyway because why not? You're already there. Let's
YOLO.
see what the trap is and what the point is. Um, and so I think that's what kind of is what brings Maito to that is like it could very I mean even if it is a trap, it could be his mother and he could see her again. And I think it's key to understand that Maito has wanted to see his mother since for the longest time. He's missed her. We saw him have that nightmare about her burning in the fire. We saw that he cried after that. We saw again that when he opened the book and read it, he like glued himself into his seat and was reading it, and the tears came again. This is obviously for Maito like a big moment because it's the whole idea of I would give up everything for that 1 second to see you again, or that one give up everything to be with you for whatever time I can get. And I think that's kind of what's there for Maito, and I think that's why he did that.
Yeah. Because I mean, hey, here is like a talking heron, right? And a weird like place that he just walked into. Everything's obviously not normal. Something's like either magical or warped about everything. So for all he knows, maybe his mom didn't die. Maybe his mom was alive. I feel he wanted to go in. He knew it was a trap, but in a way, he kind of wanted to see if maybe she wasn't dead. I would want to know that as a kid. Wouldn't you want to, dude? If you lost your mom, like, wouldn't you want to at that age? Wouldn't you want to know the possibility of maybe she really isn't dead?
Yeah. And I think that's kind of like the part, and I think again, like if we focus on the idea of moving forward in life and moving beyond grief, right? Like this is a moment for Maito because it's either maybe she is alive after all and the hope that I had is justified, or she is gone and now I have to reckon with that again. But this time really reckon with that. And obviously, in this moment, we see that happens. Maito isn't happy with it. He's about ready to shoot his arrow at the heron because it's like, you just done me dirty.
Yeah.
And then the heron's like, listen up, boy, you have one shot. If you don't take your chance, seize the opportunity. No, this isn't 8 Mile. He's like, take the shot, and if you miss it, I'll rip your heart out because I'm gonna rip out your heart, the heart of you greedy, cocky boy, or whatever. And Maito actually doesn't shoot the arrow. The arrow pulls itself because what we've learned in another shot, which I don't know if we talked about, is what makes the arrow so important, like special now, is the feather that he uses is like a tracking device, like a honing missile to the heron. So it flies out of his hands. It obviously misses the heron, and then the heron's like, I'm about to like kill you, and then the arrow's like, bruh, and just like comes back and starts chasing after the heron. And eventually the heron gets hit in the beak, and what we find out is that the heron is not a heron, but some dude that is kind of like a heron, but not. He's got like the big nose. He's like got the teeth, which is something that we noticed before that the heron was not normal, and there's why. And so with the beak now being shot, he can no longer fly. And now so that happens.
It was so one of the things that it was kind of weird to me. Now that I think about it, and I just scolded the Google reviewers, but it was weird to me how coincidentally he picked the right feather that was the heron's weakness, right? Because he says that the reason that the arrow was able to do everything and was even able to, get it all jacked up by shooting it right at its beak, and where we start seeing this heron just start breaking down into this weird dwarf, big nose, big teeth, like goblin looking guy. He's like, oh no, my arrow number, what was it? Arrow number 7?
It was like feather number 7.
Yeah. My feather number 7, my only weakness. Fudge. That's where I was like, I was like,
Right?
I don't know how to take that. Is it, I don't want to, I'm not going to say it. It just, the writing on that one was weird. Right. I just, or it comes back to, everything is supposed to go the way that it's supposed to go, because that's how Miyazaki's movies are. Everybody has a role to play. So, it was meant for his number 7 feather to be the one that's used as to make that arrow magical out of his other hundreds of feathers that he has. And why did that one not disappear? I guess. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, please go on, and then I'll follow up with you.
It's because I was thinking, I was like, actually, never mind, because I remember when we talked a little bit about it last episode, was that when he went first time into the tower, into that house, right? All the feathers that he had collected, they all disappeared, except for one that he was able to get a hold of, right?
I think that was later. I think
that was
forget
later.
Where that was found. Yeah.
Where did he find that? Was it maybe when he was trying to fight it with the sword?
I think so. I think that's when he did. I think it's either that or it's.
I feel like that's when he finds the sword and breaks and everything. That's when he finds the feather. I think it was after that weird little fever fight that he had is where he finds the feather.
For all the people in the tavern, it's been a couple weeks, I think, since we've both seen the movie, so some details might be a little bit hazy. So if you're listening,
tell us in the comments.
Yeah, and if you're like, you idiots, this is when he actually got it. It'd be like, all right, cool, but it doesn't change anything. Anyway,
I just thought it was weird, but in a way, maybe it was set up in an opportune time for him to find the feather. I don't know. What do you think?
So hear me out. I'm sorry to interrupt you if I did.
No, go ahead. I'm just lost.
I think about this a lot because, so in this past week, I have been binging a lot of anime that I've been meaning to catch up on. And I'm going to keep tying this stuff in because I feel like it's kind of relevant to a lot of other shows in general, or themes in a lot of shows. So I think Attack on Titan, right? Like Attack on Titan is this whole discussion on everything is determined by fate. That everything is preordained, that we are destined to these actions no matter what. Because in the show, like with Eren, like he admits that when he becomes the big old baddie that he is, which I won't try to spoil too much more than what I'm about to say, he says that like because of how time flows in him, he already knew all the events that were going to happen in motion, so he had to make the cycle continue, like repeat it, like happen. Every action was dictated to lead to that moment. It had to happen. There's another part in Mononoke no Hime where the leper talks about fighting fate because life is like hard, life is predetermined, again, life is fate. And I think this theme in mind is something that Miyazaki explores in a lot of his movies, which ties into this. The feather was meant to be found by Maito. And there's a reason for that, which we'll dive into towards the tail end because it kind of explains everything at the end of the movie. But I think it was predetermined to happen.
Yeah.
So that's why he found it.
You're right.
It's a very specific feather. You're right. Number 7 out of who knows how many. But it was the right feather found at the right time, used in the right moment to create a situation to create that particular moment to lead to what comes next.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, again, like I said, I'm not trying to hate on Miyazaki for that one. It's just, to me, it was like so, like, it was so on the nose that it did bother me for a bit. But, you know, going back to the whole thing of, I just got to accept that things happen the way that they were supposed to happen, when they were supposed to happen, and how they should be happening. Because, again, going back to the book, when it says that the book is written to the future him, it's kind of also like a foreshadowing of what we're going to see later in the movie, right? But all right, I'll let it go. I'll let it go.
No, it's fine. I think it's just a whole discussion on fate versus free will. I think that's the core tenet behind that, because I think a lot of shows tend to want to explore that. Because have you ever had the discussion? Sorry, okay, Tavern people, real quick. I'm gonna go on a different tangent here, but we're still gonna tie into The Boy and the Heron. But have you ever had the discussion with people where, like, what's fate versus free will for a human, right? Like, are our actions predetermined by fate, or is it something? Are the results of or the consequences of what we do determined by the actions that we choose to take? Because there's a whole argument in this discussion where some people believe that like there isn't free will, that everything is based off of biological programming and like based off of experience, so it's not free will so much as logic and inferencing and assumptions that our brain builds up over time. There's others who believe that, you know, religious people who will say that everything is predetermined by God, and that our life's path, whether we go through struggles or whether trials and tribulations or have like good times in life, are part of our journey that's been determined by God. Then there are just people who believe that we make our own actions and our own decisions, and then we face the consequences of that. But in the end, we have ultimate free will and choice. So I think that's kind of what's at play here, and all that stuff. So I get it. It is a little wonky that, like, again, for the sake of convenience, like, he found that feather, right? I agree with you on that. But I just think that that's such a Miyazaki theme in most of his movies, is like the discussion of fate versus free will.
Yeah.
So that's
for sure.
Anyway, that was my tangent, trying to tie it back to The Boy and the Heron. Is I think ultimately, as we understand with this movie, a lot of it is a discussion on predetermined fate.
Yeah. And there was somewhat in, like, I guess, predetermined fate in this whole movie, in the story that he's living presently. But also, it's just, I guess it's a movie about Back to the Future, if you think about it. And I don't want to say more. I don't want to say more because we haven't gone to the rest of the movie. But that's what it feels like to me, because decisions that were being made back then are affecting how things are going about right now, currently, for him. And at some point, he's going to reach a point where he then starts affecting the future him, which is the past him. God, that hurt to think about.
It's weird, but like, it's gonna make sense. Everybody that's here and also listening in whatever platform, like, once we get to the rest of the plot, it will make sense. It's a head scratcher. Right now at where we're at.
Yeah. So to get back to the story, like Ambu had said, he gets shot. The heron becomes this like weird creature with a big nose, huge teeth. And he just reminds me of that, like, stereotypical, like, uncle I'm not gonna say everybody has, because I don't think I have an uncle like that, but the stereotypical, like, cartoonish uncle that, like, they're bald, they're a low life, you know that they're gonna lie to you, they're gonna look out for themselves or whatever, that starts basically complaining that Mahito just kind of like wrecked his butt by shooting him through the beak, and killing his entire transformation, and making him lose all this power that he had as the Heron. But well, they're about to have like a more in-depth showdown of Heron versus Boy, or like half creature and Boy. The founder, right? The great grand what do they call
Yeah, the
him?
wizard, the grand uncle.
Yeah, the grand uncle just kind of tells him to chill, f off, and that he wants him with him, right? To bring him to him, right?
Yeah, he tells the Birdman to guide Maito to find Natsuko. Like, he's
Right.
basically saying, take him there.
Take it to Natsuko. Right.
Which then the bird boy or Heron man snaps his finger and he starts sinking into the floor, and he's like, good luck in finding her, surviving. And then poor Kiriko's like, I'm not a part of this. I'm the wrong person. Let me out.
I feel so bad for her, man. She starts sinking to the floor too, and gets dragged into this adventure that Mahito is off on, and she just does not want to be part of it. And it's horrible. Poor girl, poor woman.
Which is crazy, because the next thing we know, when Mahito finally lands in wherever he ends up being, Kiriko isn't there. He's by himself. And he lands on this weird place where there's like, I think, is it pelicans? Yeah, pelicans. All walking up towards him, as he turns around and he sees like this grave where it says like, all those who seek my knowledge will die, or something like that. And there's a gate that is locked. And he's just like, what is this? And it looks very cosmic. And it's the whole, like, it pulls you in because you're curious, because this is different and whatever. And then all the birds are like, bruh, like, let us in. Time to eat, time to go, time to do this and all that. And so they're like, they basically force the gate open. He's drowning in a sea of pelicans, and they're all wandering towards the opening, whatever it is, the grave, right?
Yeah, it looks like a temple / grave / something like what you would see like in a Japanese like temple for like a sort of deity. And what's the word that you used right now? Cosmic? What is the word?
Yeah, I say cosmic.
I love that. I was trying to find a word to describe how it is, but you're right. It's such a cosmic sort of presence that they give that entire area, that you're not supposed to go through the gate because there's something like way above like our understanding there. But he gets just like pile drive through by all these fucking pelicans that are just like just running him in. And yeah, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. It was just...
No, you're good. I didn't have anything more to say other than they just were starting to ram him in. And then like this person is like, sees him as they're on their boat, and they go, who opened the gate? They see the pelicans are swarming towards the grave, and poor Mahito being like, help me. So then like they turn their boat around, they land on the beach, they get this like snazzy whip that like they smack, and it's got like fire on its tip. It's like crazy. They're running. They're doing the anime run where it's like running towards everything. Yeah. They're like flinging at everybody, being like, back off, like get out, go, whatever. And Mahito's just like, what is going on? As the pelicans are like running away, and then they close the gate, and then they're like, what are you doing? Why did you open the gate? Like, how did they not eat you? And Mahito's just like, I didn't. They just pushed me through, and then they just kept running. And then she notices his now broken bow, but the arrow that he has. So then they take the arrow from there, like, oh, no wonder why they couldn't eat you, because you have the gray heron's feather. And so it's kind of like, again, very convenient that he's able to escape because of this one freaking feather number 7.
Keep that in mind, guys. If you ever get taken to like some weird abstract world, all right, and you find yourselves in like in the middle of nowhere, make sure you have feather number 7, okay? Not number 6, not number 8, 7.
So, funnily enough, and I think the reason why it's feather number 7, so Miyazaki likes to use a lot of Shintoism in his movies, and the number 7 in Shinto culture is a lucky number and is associated with good fortune and blessings. because in the
Right.
Shinto belief there's 7 lucky gods. But I
Lucky
just
number
wanted to point out
7.
the yeah, so hence why number 7 is kind of pertinent in this one, and why I think the heron says like it's the one feather, the one weakness. But but yeah, in this moment he gets saved. The person's just like, oh my god, look at you, like you got how fortunate you are that you have this feather. And so then they're like, well, help me get back to my boat because the tide is coming in. But what they have to do is they have to do this like ritual where they walk backwards. There's a ring of like smoke or fire that's drawn around them. The person's doing a prayer, and then they still have to walk backward again and to the beach to basically make sure that whatever it is in that grave, and also I guess other dead, don't come up and murder them.
Yeah.
And
'Cause she seemed really scared about it. And she
yeah.
even gave him specific instructions of like, don't look at it, keep your head down. She does that weird circle around them. And she even says, back out slowly without looking behind you. Which was weird to me, but I feel like I've heard that somewhere, like either through like something in mythology or even the Bible. I feel like there's something about that which makes it even more like godlike, whatever the hell they just encountered there, which I wish we knew a little bit more about. Did you ever understand what that was about, or do you have an
No,
idea?
I never looked it up. Let me see if I can find something while we're talking.
While you're looking, I guess what I want to tell the rest of the tavern and everybody's listening, to describe it, it's essentially, if you think about those big stone hedges from like in Europe, where it's those two huge stones holding a larger slab of stone, but also much wider, and it looks like a temple at the same time, and it has these I don't know. It just has this like weird feeling, like something is there, and I don't know how, without even her having to come in and tell Mahito to be careful and how to back away from the place. The way that Miyazaki is able to even like canvas the scene where he just walked into somewhere super either very holy or very powerful that could literally wreck his life. I'd like to think that it's maybe even possibly the heart of this entire tower, right? That we learn a little bit later or more about, as the story's kind of being told to Mahito's dad while they had been looking for Natsuko. Now at this point, Mahito's dad is looking too, but then one of the maids tells the dad about the story about the house, and he thought he knew the story, but she tells him something different, right? Because they had told him that the house was made by a family member, that came from overseas, very knowledgeable, etc., very wealthy, and he built the house. But in reality, she says that it's actually something that fell out of the sky and into that area. And yeah, it's true. This family member did build a house, but he built the house over that's like, I'm just going to call it for what I saw, what it is. It looked like it was a meteorite that came from outer space, landed there. It had power or something cosmic about it, like Ambo just said. And the grand uncle realized what it was, not really what it was, but how much power it had. And he decided to either build this home around it to protect the outside world from it, or to keep it to himself. I don't know, right? Whatever. I don't think it really goes into saying what his intent was. But it's a whole different story now. Now we're getting into territory of, if you think about it, Ambu, kind of like it, right? in the scary movie It with the
Yeah.
clown, because it's all about aliens, right? Like it wasn't like a demon or anything like that. It was an alien that feeds off of people's fear, and it
Hmm.
eats children in their fear, right? So now we're getting into a stone that it kind of has the same concept, because this stone is empowering this man to create this entire world in there, because this entire world that we're seeing here is apparently being created by the grand uncle, uh, and it just knows everything about this family, and it recognizes this
Hmm.
family, right? So it's funny how it also kind of, I mean, this to me, I kind of related to it also, aside from Back to the Future. Sorry, maybe I'm not doing Miyazaki justice, but it's a little bit of coinkydink that those two movies kind of relate a little bit to the story for me.
No,
Were
dude,
you
I
able to
get it. I
find
mean,
anything about it, by the way?
so actually, the ceremony itself, I did not find anything on. But what is interesting is I kind of went into a rabbit hole with the Boy and the Heron, with
Oh, of
the
course.
themes in the Boy and the Heron, and like other inspirations. And one of the ones that it brought up was the movie uses two paintings for as a reference. So the funeral site or the graveyard is based off of a painting called the Isle of the Dead, and it's this beautiful one with like the cedars. There's like an opening. It's its own separate island and everything, and it's represents the procedure to reach a destination. So it's all about like reaching. It's about the trip, not the destination, and everything,
Mm.
and all that. It's also, yeah. It's basically referencing that and about like life and death. So like the trend, like how life is a journey itself between life and death, and with death comes life and life comes death,
Mm.
because it looks very similar to something that we'll see later on in the movie. Like the structure looks very similar to another area that we dive into later. Um, but one of the things I think is interesting about why the heron is so important in this movie is, in Japanese mythology,
Mhm.
herons are meant to be the messengers for the gods.
Mm.
So that's one of the themes that comes up with the heron is they often are depicted as messengers of the gods or symbolizing purity and transition. So again, it could be a transition from life into death as well. Um, in those cases, not death, but really just a transition into moving forward in his grief and everything. But I think that's why the heron is so pertinent in this one, is that it is a more or less a messenger of of a celestial being, which does tie into the meteor and how the meteor is revered as like this all knowing, this portal to other worlds, and that the tower is a tower in another world, which is another tower, kind of like how Bioshock Infinite was. So I think that's why it ties in, is that this is more or less a spiritual plane that we're seeing Maito in. So,
Gotcha.
um, yeah. Um, yeah, because I think you could also argue. Oh man, I don't want to dive. Okay, I'm not going to dive into that because I think that goes too far into what we're in right now. Um, basically, we're I'm sorry, we're still at the part where he's
Mhm.
sailing with the person, right? Like they just got through the wave.
Yeah, this woman, saves his butt.
Mm-hmm.
She scolds him and whatever, and then she sees that the waves and the wind are in great shape. Apparently, that's kind of how she describes it. And she gets back on her boat. He tries to help her. Obviously, he's almost
Mm-hmm.
drowning himself. She pulls him back in, and they go fishing. They go fishing
Yep.
for a gigantic, weird fish that has like four fins. It
I
almost
think
looks
so.
like Nessie has Nessie's body, the Loch Ness monster, right, with like the four little fins and
Yeah.
the tail, but not the long neck. It's just like a big fish with four fins, which I don't know if even that has like a representation. Maybe it's just a fish. Whatever. We're not gonna dive into that. And they fish it out, right? And I don't even know how they did it because this woman's tiny. He's obviously a little boy. That little boat that they're in is a tiny little wooden boat. But okay, I guess they're able to fish out this gigantic ass like it's not even a fish. It looks more like a whale. But and then I think that what happens after that? My memory gets lazy after that.
Sorry, I feel like a big brain moment that just happened
Oh,
when thinking about this.
Go with
but I don't know. I need to let it ruminate because I think we need to tie it in later. But one of the things I want to note to help tie it in later is as they're sailing, she tells Maito that the ship's... So when he falls into this world and he falls into this isle, right? You see a bunch of ships in the background just kind of floating.
Yeah.
And she makes it a point to tell him that they're not real. They're phantoms. They're remnants of people who have not been able to move on or to move forward. So that's something that I want to put in there that I think is key to understanding some of the themes in this movie later. But what happens in that particular mode that you're talking about after they get the fish is they go back to where she lives, but she's also got people following her because they want to trade for parts of the fish because she's the only one that can kill them, or more or less.
Yeah,
nobody else in this world.
Right.
Yeah, she says nobody else in the world can kill the fish. She's the only one that can, and so that's why that's why they're following her. Yeah, that's her role. And and so that's when we also see like people already waiting. We see the cute little wada-wadas that are like popping out there. These little white little puffy boys that are just running and are super excited. And then they get the fish onto the platform, and then she's like, yo, this fish ain't gonna cut itself, let's get going. So then she throws all these buckets down so that way she can divvy up the parts, and then gives him a knife also to cut and shows him how to cut it. But she makes it look easy, right? She's just like, cut, going through like it's nothing, right? And then Maito's like trying, she's like, come on, you can do it. He's like trying really hard. And then he gets blood splashed on him. And then of course, like as he gets to the very end of cutting the fish open, the guts spill out and she's like, don't do that. The water need it so they can fly later. And the water are like, bro, we about to get dinner. We feasted, we're ready. So they're like stoked for it. And then after that, it cuts to, I believe, Maito sleeping underneath the table while she's getting dinner ready. Like we see a pot of, I think, stew being cooked. She's getting bread. She's like cutting it, and he's waking up. And what you notice is that there's these little wooden figures that are surrounding him, and they look like the grannies that have been taking care of him.
They were so cute. The little, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
they were. Yeah. And then I think she says like, don't touch them because she put them there for a specific reason. And
because he says like they look like the grannies from the house, and she said, oh yeah, I know, they're supposed to because that's where I put them so that they can take care of you.
Mm-hmm. And then also tells him where the water is so he can drink some water while she starts to eat. And then I think there's this moment where it dawns on him on who she is. Because here's the thing. This movie, number 7, is like a big thing and is a part of like Shintoism. And Miyazaki loves to dabble with Shinto like symbolism. Mm-hmm. There's 7 grannies, but only 6 are there. So guess who this person is now? And another hint that you get is the kimono that she's wearing.
Right, her
is
outfit.
Very similar. Yeah. Turns out it's Kiriko. And she's like, I didn't tell you my name. How did you know? And he's just like, I forget what he says that how she reminds him of her. But he points out something that indicates that he can tell who she is. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I gotta jump back real quick.
Yeah.
Did we talk about the part where she had the same scar as he did?
Oh no, we didn't. Yeah, that's a good one. Go ahead.
Although that kind of disappeared in the story for me. I thought that was something that was odd to bring up and then throw away. Is when, as they're trying to get the boat into the water and trying to make sure it doesn't tip over because of how strong the waves were, his bandage falls off of his head, and then he has the mark, and his mark is showing. He's like, "Oh no, where'd it go?" And she's just like, "Oh, I have one there too," but I forget what it was from. I think she said she had to like fight something and then ended up like killing it after she got that scar. Anyway, that was something that I remembered that I thought was interesting. But I kind of wish that explained a little bit more in the story. Mm-hmm. But I feel like that was a weird throwaway, right? Am I gaslighting myself?
Yeah, no. I think that what she wanted to share with him was that to him, because he self-inflicted that to himself in a way to kind of like, he kind of described it as a sin, right? Like that's his sin to carry, or a mark of a sin for him to carry, right? For making a choice to not wanting to partake in this new life, right? Granted, it was a smart choice in a way because of the way that his dad was not helping the scenario of him trying to mix into that group of kids and into that community. Because of that feeling of self-importance, just always wanting to shove it in people's face. But also in a way, his way of protesting, of not wanting to be part of it. So I think her sharing that same scar kind of tells him that, we all have those scars too. We all have made decisions that we've made in our point in our lives that were our way to protest, that I don't want things to go this way only because, everybody else thinks it's the way that it's supposed to go, but it's a constant reminder that I need to carry with me, because it's a type of milestone that I set for myself. So I don't think it was much deeper than that. Her sharing that, I don't think it was more to that. At least from what I remember or gathered from that interaction that they had. But it was something that kind of like helped them normalize that sort of scar, right?
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I can see it. I can see it as just like also like I'm imperfect just like you.
Exactly. Yeah. And just kind of like humanizes that part of him, because in a way he was having a hard time dealing with that scar because it kept on bothering him, not only physically, but also psychologically throughout this entire experience as well. Because in a way he was maybe even ashamed because he's like, oh no, my bandage fell off, you know? What I was going to add, though, since you mentioned what are they called? The little creatures, the little white creatures that...
the wada.
The wada, right? So the wada, until just now, it reminded me that the wada are very similar to Aztec belief, right? Where when children who die before this type of ceremony that the Aztecs used to have to kind of like bring the children into, I guess, make them part of the community or life. Basically, like children that died in either childbirth or that died early before they could even be named, right? Aztecs believe that there's 13 levels. There's like levels of celestial heavens and hell. One of them is called Chichihuahuacu, and that is a place where all these young souls, similar to those tiny little creatures, are fed, right? and then they're watched over or nursed, right? And each one is looked after to mature and possibly maybe even move on or into another opportunity or be reborn, right? So it goes back to the whole conversation I had earlier today of my rant of how Miyazaki has that interpretation of these souls, or because that's what they are, right? I'm sorry I got ahead, but those little tiny white things
No,
are
you're good.
basically souls that are maturing with time, are being cared for, nursed, and Kiriko is that nurse, right? And in Chichiwakwaku, there's a tree that serves as the Kiriko. It produces this milk fruit that feeds these souls, right? That knew no better in life because they never got to experience life and are actually nursed and taken care of. So I just wanted to mention that. It's just, I find it kind of cool that it still relates to this other sort of belief that we have here in Mexico.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is I think what I liked about the Wada Wada and its symbolism, because I believe it's like the idea of like again in like religious beliefs of like the soul right in the body, like the argument that we all have souls and everything. But also it represents like DNA. It represents the like various different components that make a human. Because like what I love is the part when I think we could just skip ahead, right? Like
Yeah, go ahead.
what the Wada Wada as Maito steps out just to like get his breath and be like, or he was gonna go use the restroom.
Yeah.
And then he just after he uses the restroom decides to like just chill outside for a bit. One of the Wada Wada just like walks up to him, just becomes like just sucks in all the air and starts like going up and then starts falling down because he didn't get enough air and lands in Maito's hand, and Maito like bounces him a little bit. And then the Wada Wada again just does the whole like fills up even more and starts flying away and waves goodbye. And then you see these other Wada Wada running out, getting ready to go. And the other Wada Wada sitting in the tree. And Kiriko is like, well, this is what they do. Like once they've eaten enough and like they've had enough nutrients, they float up to where you were from to be reborn. Or to be born as a human, because I think it shows again like the whole idea of death and life and like the barrier between the two worlds, and how there's always like a little bit of an opening for that. And I think that ties into a lot of cultural beliefs, like in the Festival of the Dead and everything. Again, like the way that the two planes often intersect. And what I like is as we see the Wada Wada flying, they turn into two it looks like springs, but really if you were to put them together they look like DNA, like they're almost like a double helix, to again indicate the building blocks of life. And so it's this like beautiful moment of like,
true. I didn't even think about it that way.
Yeah, so it's like the whole idea of like this world where death resides, but also like how life is reborn and how the cycle of life is. And then the thing, what happens is the pelicans come in and they begin eating the Wada Wada. And what's important is that in this moment, the pelicans are like harbingers of death. Yeah. I believe they're meant to be symbolism for like how life doesn't always make it. And not to bring up a trigger warning for anybody who doesn't want to hear this. And Silver, you can even stop me when I bring this up. Like, pregnancy is hard, right? Pregnancy is one of the most stressful situations any human can go through. Women, I commend you for anyone who has gone through pregnancy, who has been wanted to like have kids, the willingness to do so, because pregnancy has a high risk of failure and death. Right. Yeah. And not just for the child, but also for the
The
mother
mother.
themselves, because there's various complications. You talk about like prenatal care, you talk about postnatal care, you talk about reducing stress. There's certain things you can't eat, there's certain things you can't drink. There's a lot of things that go into making sure that this baby lives. And I think what this moment is to show is that life doesn't always happen. And just as natural as it is for life to exist, because by some miracle we do, there's also moments where life cannot exist. And so I think that's what that symbolism is, again, is like the contradiction of the balance of life and death.
Yeah. Yeah. It is of a balance of life and death, and it's like it goes back to again what we've been saying all this time, right? Everybody has a role to play, right? You know, whether it's to the point of you know, what's bringing to life, to the point of, you know, taking it away, which is in this case the pelicans, and it again, going back to the whole thing of like it's easy to see the pelicans as the bad guys, but in reality they just have a role to play in this entire like process of rebirth, which is what this is technically, right? Because they explain that those little wada wada are souls that are being waited to be born again into new lives. But I'm wondering what, comparing it to any other religions or beliefs, the pelicans. Do you know if the pelicans, just how the heron is known to be like a, you know, a bringer of the gods of their word or whatever? Do pelicans have like a meaning, a symbolism, a dark, not dark, his symbolism? To be fair, I guess a symbolism also of death. I don't know. I've never known if pelicans had that.
So I believe they are supposed to symbolize harbingers of death.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but like,
So-
is it something that's belief in Japan too, that the pelicans are known for
That
that?
part I'm not too sure. I think in the movie that's what it's supposed to represent.
Right. Well, yeah, in the movie, that's what they're supposed to represent.
Let me just pull it. Let me type it in real quick.
worries.
I'm just gonna say, everybody, I will use Google real quick to
And meanwhile, I
double-check.
will continue to grace you with the beautiful sound of my voice by reminding you that I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that one. But I will say, though, so speaking of roles to play, while the pelicans were eating some of the wada wada that were being taken up, which technically, I guess, represents like in this world down or up. I don't know. Because you're already technically in this weird, like, in between heaven and hell or death, I don't know, limbo. And by going up, they're kind of going into the world to be reborn. There's also another person while this is happening, right? And they're trying to stop the pelicans from eating the wada wada. There's another woman that just kind of like glides in the middle of the ocean and then starts shooting the pelicans with fireballs. Like really big fireballs. It almost looks like fireworks, right? And it starts burning the pelicans and dispersing them to try and not eat the wada wada, but at the same time the fire's also hitting some of the wada wada at the same time. So she's kind of like this just new person that comes in is like somebody that balances the scales, but it seems to balance them evenly on both sides. It you know, it starts to stop the pelicans, but also at the same time takes out some of the wada wada. So there must be like a meaning to that, of course, with maybe weighing. Okay, so hold on. So let me explore that thought.
Okay.
So maybe what she is kind of like what we see also in Egyptian culture or even Greek mythology, right? That there is the weighing of the souls, the weighing of the heart, you know, the weighing of the value of that person should they be born now. or should they be accepted onto the next role or next phase that soul needs to move on to, or not, or does it need to, you know, cook longer, or maybe it should have never been born, and that's why the pelicans are there, because they're meant to take some of those souls that were not meant to be born, sadly, right? I mean, it sounds cruel to us, but maybe there's a higher understanding or meaning to that, and on a spiritual level, I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
No. So I couldn't find anything regarding pelicans. If anything, it was trying to get me to look at cranes, which is not the same. But the thing that I find interesting is that I think it is a discussion on just how life is. Because again, like in Mononoke, one of the lines I remember is the leopard that's dying. That tells Ashitaka like life is suffering and life is hard, that you can fight against fate or something like that. It's a very powerful quote. I almost got it as a tattoo. But I think it ties into that, where like life can just be cruel and there's no reason behind it, and there's nothing to understand. Sometimes what the machinations of life are just what they are. And any meaning behind and anything else, it is just too much. So I do think it is really just like how life is. And I think in that situation, like sometimes like life is often sacrificed to take care of other life. I feel like there could be symbols in there, but I think it's just simply like,
but is it sacrificed? Are we giving it the word sacrifice because of our beliefs or how we see life? Or is it just like, also like you just said, right? It's just, that's just how it is. It's just one of the many mechanisms that have to move life, right? Or that it just makes the machine move, right? It's just another cog piece in the machine that just does what it's supposed to do without much thought of whether that cog is a bad cog or it's a good cog, right? Because if you look at a machine and you look at an engine, you're not thinking, oh man, that one piston in that engine is a bad piston, because it pushes the pressure out. But that piston is good because that one is the one that allows the gasoline to go in and cause the combustion. Like, it's just a machine. It's doing what it's supposed to do. Its purpose is to move things along and get the car going. So again, going back to the whole, there is no bad person, there's no good person. It's just, it is what it is, just kind of like breathing air.
Yeah, and I think that's what we have to understand is like, and why the next scene that I'm going to describe is important is, you know, in a way, the way that it's framed, right? I think it comes off as like the pelicans are evil because these poor Wada are like, you know, they're just trying to live, bro. They're just trying to be born.
They're just trying to fly, man. They're just trying to float.
But then like later on, again, I think Maito's going back outside after something, or like he wakes up and he can't sleep or something. He goes outside or he hears a sound, and then he sees this noble pelican who is dying, and the pelican is like, please take me out of my misery. I cannot fly. I am dying. And then Maito's like, well, why do you eat the wada? Like, why do you do that? Like, why would you do something like that? And the pelican's like, well, you know, we were dragged into this world and we tried to escape. We tried to fly as high as we could go, but we could never find escape. And so the only thing that we can eat is the wada. And I'm afraid for our younger pelicans because they're forgetting how to fly. And to me, in that moment is, again, like you said, I think it's a recognition of the machinations of life and how, you know, there are things that may seem cruel, but they're not. From a cold, rational perspective, it's just how it is. They adapted to survive because the wada was the food that they could get. But what I also find interesting about this moment is I feel like it's a discussion again on how in each generation things begin to change and customs begin to shift and change, and
Mhm.
then the older generation is afraid of like losing those customs and traditions, and how they
Mhm.
change. um, the next generation changes with that, and not knowing how that will impact them, and the fear of that. And because like, yeah, okay, the younger pelicans, they should know how to fly because that's kind of part of their thing. But if you look at it from a different lens, we think about how, um, a lot of people talk about how, or older generations go like, oh, everybody's on their cell phone these days, and oh, everybody's doing all this. Why don't they respect like not using their phones all the time or doing whatever? And but then like their old generation, they read books all the time, or they like read the paper all the time, or they had different lifestyles that doesn't match what we have now. As life changes, technology advances, the world changes around you, and you have to learn to meet what it's how it's asking you to adapt. And
Mhm.
so I think there's a discussion in that of like moving forward, learning to grapple with that fear of the uncertainty of how the world will move forward.
Yeah. 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 It's a very deep part of the movie. It has so much to seriously offer, and it's crazy. I feel like we could probably spend like hours talking about it. Um, but let's try and push a little bit forward. Sorry to be the guy that pushes us forward.
I don't know.
Because
Sorry, go on.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, what happens after uh, uh, after they have this entire scene with the pelicans.
Right. So the pelican dies, and then the heron shows up, and the heron just like something happens where they have a discussion. And he's like, "What are you gonna do? Bury him?" And again, somehow logic dictates
Oh
that
right.
like somehow he's gonna bury the pelican, which I think
Mhm.
is again kind of symbolic in a sense of like again letting go of the old ways and moving forward in life, or in the case of
Mhm.
Mahito's journey, like it's almost symbolic of like letting go of letting like letting go of grief, like burying your grief or whatever. And then in the morning we find them like getting more water or something, and the heron is helping Mahito with it, and then he almost falls, and there's a little there's a little tidbit with that, and then Kiriko brings them in for food, and then they sit down and have a conversation, right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
What
Do
did
you
they
mind if
converse about? I can't think about what the conversation they had. I can't remember. Like it. I hate that I'm already starting to forget parts of this movie.
It's totally fine. She's basically trying to get them to make up to work together to
Yeah, yeah,
find
yeah, yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
find Natsuko, because she's like, stop trying to like doesn't a didn't you once tell me that like herons always lie? And he's like, uh but this time I'm not lying. And there's the whole other thing about like about how basically it's Kiriko being like, okay, look, I can't go with Maito on this journey. You
Mhm.
need to help him. So, like, stop being a douche to Maito and help him. That's pretty much what it boils down to. There's a whole that's the whole discussion. Anyway, we can go more in depth with this conversation later. It's so funny. We've talked about how much, there's so much to unpack with the Boy and Heron, and it's
Mhm.
so easy to get lost in like talking about the
Yeah.
symbolism and the themes of this movie. So I think this is a good point to stop at, so we can continue moving forward with a part three now for the Boy and the Heron. How do you feel about that,
It,
Sylvan?
it's worth it. It's worth it. And I am looking at everybody here on the table, but I'm just gonna say, you all know you want to hear more about gaping holes, huh? Come on. So no,
Large
I agree.
thinking.
There's just so much to get lost in this movie, and we've just barely touched the middle part of it. That's the crazy part of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's go ahead and close our tab for tonight, and we'll reconvene in the table, and we'll finish off later another time on part 3.
So thank you everybody so much for joining us. Once again, if you haven't already, please follow us. We're on pretty much every platform you can imagine for a podcast. We also have a YouTube channel. We have a Twitter account, the TBD Tavern. And if you don't like us, then again, send us your haters.
Come tell us.
We love it.
Tell us.
Tell us, but also send your haters in so that way you can be like, oh man, I really hate this show. Like, you should go listen to them. And we'll take.
I want to see those 1-star Google reviews. I want to see them. Bring them. Bring me the Han Solo.
But thank everybody again for joining us on our journey in the tavern. It's becoming more and more alive, and it's really fun to sit here with you all and regale about movies and about shows and everything. And we wouldn't be here without you. So please continue to take care of yourselves with this brand new year. I hope that your resolutions are going well if you have any, and we will see you next time.
Adios.
Bye.